over time, the business moves from selling on price and delivery to becoming a solution sell. Along with solution sell, the other thing that happens is that the world becomes competitive. Now, when somebody sells a product, and even in Mumbai, guess what? They've got to worry about whether there's a competing product made in China, competing product made in Korea, competing product made in Finland. They've got to worry about competition. There was a time when India was like a closed country, closed economy. People could not import things and compete with the local suppliers. In the last 15 years, as a part of the whole liberalization process started in 1992, it became a competitive world. And what's true in India is even more true in some of the bigger markets, like the biggest markets like USA, Europe. Very competitive because everybody wants the business, right? And some people take advantage of lowest cost, other people take advantage of better quality, other people take advantage of better service. So competition can play all kinds of games, and the salesman has to package together the solution in a way that it's most interesting or is the best deal for the customer. The sales cycles are long, and essentially the whole migration of the selling process is moving to something called, strategic selling in a consultative manner. Right? You are becoming the best salespeople, becoming consultants and advisors to people that are buying the product. So that is really how all the selling happens. And maybe I'll ask Adil to see if he's had an example of how selling has changed in the 15 years that he's been selling for Wood.
Yeah, so again, selling starts even before I applied for a job, okay? And my folks, since you are all from Bombay, all disclosure I can do is my name used to be Adil Irani. Irani is very common, as most people know. Parsi Irani, okay? But I was in Texas, okay? So they would automatically assume me that I'm from Iran, Iranian. You're Iranian. So when I used to make a sales call, what's your last name? Irani? No chance for me to even come close to that sale. But how did I get the job? The first job which I got was, I changed my name officially from Irani to Adi. Adi is my dad's name. So why not? You have to sell. I promise you, my boss, in the first interview, he says, he knew that this is both, he was an Indian guy also, he was also Parsi, in Dallas, in Richardson. Okay. And he saw Adi, what is that? Both are first names, you know. So I explained to him that I did have an opportunity and I chose to cut out that name because Iran doesn't mean to me anything. I'm from freaking Bombay. I'm a Parsi. I'm not associated with anything with Iran. So I cut it. So that was my first selling. So the guy gave me a job in the next 30 minutes without other things, you know. So that's selling. I had to sell myself. You've got to sell yourself in a job situation. So that was my first experience on selling. You've got to enjoy selling, folks. It's a part of the thrill. It's a part of the success. You've got to really put yourself that you love this job. Otherwise, you know, if you like engineering, you want to build something, go get yourself another co-founder. Get yourself a co-founder who can sell. Partner.
But most likely you become the CEO before long. That's a key factor of that, right? I mean, as we discussed probably in one of the early classes, that essentially the guy who can present, the guy who can connect with people, the guy who can, sell and promote your product, he's the guy who becomes the face of the company. And, so you're going to have to be prepared to take a lesser role in the company as it goes along if you're not essentially, he was also an ID Bombay guy, 75 batch, and he went to the financial services industry. And his name was Avinash Manudane, and I think he was a big donor for IIT Bombay. $1 million plus, I think he established some chairs and so on there. So Avinash Manudane was his name, and he was trying to be a player in the financial services industry in New York City, working for Goldman Sachs. And his customers were basically Americans, white Americans, or they were Jews. And he walks in and says, "I'm Avinash Manudane," and essentially they hang up the phone. So what he did was he decided to change his name. So he chose Avi Nash. Became Avi Nash. Avi Nash. Avi is a Jewish. Nash is the best American name you can get. Avi Nash. And he became so successful at Goldman Sachs that he ran the entire chemical industry practice for Goldman Sachs. He's an advisor to probably the Fortune 10 chemical companies in the world. He's an advisor to Mukesh Ambani here, he's an advisor to Corning, he's an advisor to all the biggest chemical companies, and he's donated millions of dollars to ID Bombay, ID Gandhinagar, and he's a
We are hoping it will be millions of dollars.
He's not, you know that. So, anyway,
Is Rajaso original name?
no, even that changed. Because originally it was Rajen Jaswal. And it was very hard for people to, say Rajen whenever I would call people. So I had to make it simple so that I made it Raj Jaswal. So Jaswal was simple enough, and Raj. Most Indians are Raj. So Rajendra became Raj, Rajan became Raj. All the Raj thing became, Rajneesh became Raj. Everybody, so there are more Rajas in America than any other first names. Anyways, but very good. You can see how, as an entrepreneur,
I think
when you're selling,
everybody that the original name had to come on the plan. The student will start changing the names now.
that's true. Well, the thing is, there are two personas. These days, everybody's got multiple, what do they call them? Avatars, exactly. So you're going to have all kinds of avatars. But I think the message really is that selling means, you really have to figure out how you're going to connect with the other person, right? And if they cannot even say your name and remember your name, how are they going to ever do business with you, right? So it's a very good point to make. Excellent, thanks. I forgot about that this morning. Okay, so let's move on to, selling stuff. So the important thing to remember is that not easy to become this consultative advisor, trusted advisor, and so on. You've got to start somewhere. So this thing shows kind of a 7-step process about how you're going to evolve from the start of your selling journey to where you want to finally end up. So everybody starts off at the first level, which is called teller. So basically, salesmen, at the first thing that they have to do is be able to communicate about their product effectively. So they should be able to know all the features of the product, they should be able to talk about it in a nice, convincing manner, they should be able to tell stories about how people like the product, etc. But it's all about telling. So whether you understand the customer's needs or not, you should tell about your product. And there is a role for such people. Because, conferences, and we've got hundreds of people who come by our booth. And I don't have time to go through the whole sales process. I just have to communicate what the product's all about. So I needed to have my junior salespeople be tellers. So I would just take 5, 10, 15 junior people and put them in the booth, and they're just telling everybody what the product is and what you're launching and all that stuff. So there's a role for even tellers. There's a role, and it's important to realize that no job is a ordinary job or a mean job or not so high level job. Essentially, we have to learn and get there, just like we all had to learn ABC before we can write a PhD thesis. So same way, teller is the first step in learning how to get your product, become a good salesperson. So moving on from teller, essentially the next step is moving on to somebody who can actually sell benefits. So you just don't talk about your product features anymore. You talk about how the customer can benefit from that particular product feature that the product has. Right? So you don't say that my laptop has got a processor that works at 3.2 gigahertz. What does that mean to a housewife, or a businessman, or a school student, or whoever? What does it matter, 3.2 gigahertz? But the benefit might be that this laptop will boot up in 3 seconds versus 10 seconds. Now, you can see that there's a benefit that is understandable by the consumer. So basically, you move from talking about features to selling benefits, right? So that's the next step. And every product that you have, you convert the whole thought process from features to benefits. One more thing about selling benefits is that every consumer or every buyer of a product will actually have different needs. So you have to figure out, if your product has got 20 benefits, you're not talking about a benefit that he doesn't care about. Right? If somebody doesn't care about the speed at which the laptop boots up, but only cares at the speed at which the Excel spreadsheet is processed, right? Or how fast he gets email, or whether the YouTube video plays without failure. So then that's what you talk about. You don't talk about boot up process, right? So every product has got 15, 20 benefits or more, and you have to figure out what benefit a particular potential buyer really will appreciate. So that is the second thing. Now you find out that life gets a little bit more complex, because everybody wants to start selling to the same customer. So the customer has a choice. Customer can choose one laptop versus another laptop. You can choose one piece of chemical processing equipment versus another piece of chemical processing equipment, one lathe versus another lathe. So there's all kinds of choices that come. And as a company, you can't manufacture everything. You can only manufacture the product lineup that you have. So basically, you get into the competitive. So you move from seller to something called the hunter mode. So hunters are people that know how to compete. So one of the things that I asked you guys to read, this kind of books is called the Sun Tzu Art of War. So basically, hunters are masters at competing. And competing is where you are a master strategist. You know how the purchasing process, buying process happens in the organization, who's got the ability to write a check, with whom you should build relationships, when you should go ahead and make your product promo, etc. So all kinds of strategic and tactical decisions about during the sales process is something that the hunter is an expert at. So he's like a master strategist at orchestrating the sales process. Then you go to somebody called a farmer. So you already have the account. Now you want to basically take care of that customer. Take care of it so that all the business in that account is yours. You don't leave any room for the competition to get in from the side, right side, left side, because once somebody gets in like a virus, they can cause a lot of headache. Very hard to get rid of the competition once they enter the account. So farmers do account management. They control every part of the company that is buying a product, and you see that all the business is controlled by you. Now we move on to some more interesting deals where you're not just selling the product, but you're selling a relationship. So you basically go and do something called business development, where you say, even though this particular company is not my customer, if I team up with them, then I will completely change how business is done in the marketplace. So for example, my son was VP of Business Development at a company called Dropbox. So Dropbox had lots of competition, right? They had competition from Box.net, they had competition from Google Drive, they had competition from iCloud, competition from many different companies in the US as well as everywhere else. So what the business development thought that they had was, who sells, a lot of smartphones in the marketplace? And, all the people that do these smartphones take photos that would need to be uploaded to the cloud. And they said, Samsung looks like a good company, because they thought of Apple, but Apple already had iCloud. So they said, maybe Samsung might be a good partner to team up with, and then all of a sudden, every time Samsung sells a smartphone, I'll get Dropbox automatically as a service on every smartphone. So as soon as they came up with that idea, they actually flew to Samsung about 3 years ago. And whenever you do these kinds of business development, out-of-the-box kind of deals, you might face some significantly difficult challenges. For example, they used to give, I think, 5 or 10 gigabytes free. But Samsung would figure out that, they need to make their smartphone more competitive than iCloud. So Apple was giving 10 gigabytes free. So they said, Dropbox, if you want to be pre-installed on every Samsung phone, I want 25 gigabytes free. And now Dropbox's entire business model is based on 5 gigabytes free. And that's where they had the challenge of trying to figure out whether it's worth it or not. They decided to go for it. They agreed to the 25 gigabyte free storage for every smartphone user. And guess what? All of a sudden, every quarter, as Samsung smartphones took off over the last 3 years, and they started getting 30 to 35 million new installs per quarter, 120, 140 million new users every year. And all of a sudden, in 3 years, there are close to 400 million users. The market capitalization went from $1 billion to $10 billion. And you transform the whole equation of selling. So now you're not selling one by one, you've sold in mass, right? So you can see how business development deals can actually be completely revolutionary when you go and start selling, right? So business developers are creative, and when they hit something, it's a home run or it's a strikeout. So that's what the business developers do. That's why they're called something called rainmakers. They can transform your company. salesman, you become something called a partner. So when you become a partner, you are actually advising the company as to how to evolve their company, right? So you are actually becoming their trusted partner, and they come to you and say, how should we enter this new market? Say we are successful in America, now there are another 192 countries outside America, where should we go? Should we go to Japan first? Should we go to Europe first? Should we go to Italy and Europe? Should we go to France? And as an advisor or a partner, you can say that, look, I already have a sales team, a presence in France, so let me get you into France by using these particular channels. So you kind of solve the problems for the customer, but guess what? As you solve the problems for them, you're making sales without even trying in France, right? So basically the partner, he creates a collaborative buy-sell solution. So the customer doesn't even care at that point that you're going to make money by selling product, because he's going to make even more money. So you kind of merged your interest and the customer's interest so tightly that you grow together. And then ultimately you want to be something called an industry network consultant, because at this point you are shaping how business is done. You decide that the next generation of smartphone should have ability to control robots, or ability to control a 3D printer, or whatever it is. But you are basically the guy who shapes how the whole industry evolves. And so you can see that there are 7 styles of selling, and you progress over time with a whole bunch of capabilities, skills, reputation, credibility. All of that comes together to take you all the way from just a teller, somebody who just tells about the product, all the way to becoming an industry network consultant. And by the time you get to the level where, say, Larry Page is for Google, Mark Zuckerberg is for Facebook, and so on, all of these people are shaping the world. They're shaping how the world evolves, in the economic world evolves, the business world, social media world evolves, and similarly, so they are entrepreneurs operating at the industry network consultant level.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I get to learn.
You get to learn.
No, this
This
is
is a great class.
coming from, it's not a professor. With due respects, he's a guy with actual CEO level. So, while he was talking, he mentioned about Larry and Zuckerberg and other folks. So, I wanted to make a clarity on this is entrepreneur, okay? So, entrepreneur is a completely different topic. Entrepreneur is something that you guys, you are IITians, okay? So, you can do it because you have the knowledge, you have the engineering capability, and everybody will look an easy route if you go to raise money for seed. If you come to Professor Atre, he'll give you a quick route to VC funding, and so get your ideas going. So entrepreneurship is a separate subject, okay? It's a separate topic, which I'm not here to talk about and just mention. But in selling, I want you to take 2 things from me. I'm not a professor. Selling, you have to sell to a decision maker. You've got to learn that this person, that person in the organization, whoever you're selling your product or service is a decision maker. By that it means you have identified that this guy is going to actually sign the check or make a PO, a purchase order or whatever. Going to the decision maker. Number 2, are you in the buying cycle? If you are not in the buying cycle, no matter you go to the decision maker, sorry, my budget's gone. Okay, it's a common answer, but you can fight and say, hey man, good, but I can't do it. I'm a manager, I have a budget, it's taken, come next year. So, to do that, you have to make 100 calls. Make 100 calls. Boom, boom, boom. When making those calls, out of that 100, at least 10 or 15% people will take your thing very seriously. So that comes to another point, another concept of spear fishing. You know, whether it's how hard it is to throw a spear and fish, right? If you're hungry. Sorry for the vegetarians. But you have to spear fish. You've got to eat to live, you know. So if you throw a spear, think how hard it is to catch a fish. But in the same way, you throw a net, you catch a fish. So that's another concept you have to think, is how can I create that net? In selling, how do I create that large amount? So how do you create it? The answer is by making a lot of calls. You need to make a lot of calls. And be prepared to take that rejection. Be prepared to, hey, why are you wasting my time? You know, go down the phone, do another. So that's selling. I mean, that is hardcore selling. And again, you are engineers, and most people do not like to sell. Do not, especially on a call. Try selling something, you know. Just make a fictitious say, hi, my name is Abhijit, I'm from IIT Bombay. I want to sell you this biggest thing, you know. It will be hard. It will be hard. But if you go to the right process, you go to that decision maker who has that need and who has that pain point of that product or services, and if that person is in the buying cycle, if he's in the buying cycle, he will give you the time of the day. Face-to-face meeting, and you get it done. So my one example of that was when I went to America, the US consulate rejected me once and twice. Both times, third time is my final time in appearing. So what do? I didn't know the concept of decision maker, I just was crazy, you know. And I went to the consul general, not to the officer. Everybody who's planning to come to America will have to apply for the visa, will have to go to meet an immigration officer. It's very strict, guys, okay? So they rejected me twice. So I went to the consul general. Consul general says, please don't come to me. But I tell him, you are the decision maker here. You are the head of this embassy, consulate, and I want to go to America to study. So what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong in this? Oh, nobody has told me like this. Okay, sir. What shall we do? Selling, ask for the business. Please, can you give my visa now? He said, I cannot issue you a visa, but you come again tomorrow. He said, I'm done. Third time and I'm done. Guess what? I didn't have to go. There was a guy who stamped it, and I went to America. So that was my learning in sales. So never ever quit, you know, or persistence will be very important. So buying cycle and decision maker. Both in that cases was a decision maker. And now if the quota has been finished, if the year's quota for the visa was done, no matter what I did, it would not lead to me getting the visa. So those were the two things I wanted to share.
No, Adil, let me ask you a question. So, do you remember any of your early sales when your company didn't have much credibility, who's whirling?
Yeah.
Can you share how you kind of establish yourself at the early stages? Because as a first-time entrepreneur, I think that's a challenge that everybody is going to run into. You're going to have to sell the first time, and the second time, third time. But nobody knows who you are, what your company is. Yes, you've got your IT degree, but who are you? Yeah.
So my first time in 1998, 99, when I was doing business for a large company or proposing to, so I had this guts to ask him, the manager who had a need. So he had a need to hire 10 engineers.
Yeah.
And those engineers were not available in Richardson because there's a boom going on. Cisco, people are giving a lot of options, plans, a lot of incentives.